Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it. They're sick. These are sick people.
The Democrats, man, what is going on with the problem with deporting illegal immigrants? And in particular, there's a case with a gentleman who was an MS-13 gang member. Now they are going and doing interviews, wanting to get this gentleman back, do a welfare check on him, whatever the case is. This is nothing more but political theater, ladies and gentlemen. This is all it is. They want to grab headlines. They're going to throw as many things at the wall to see what sticks. They just want to go against anything President Donald Trump is doing so they can claim it as a victory for the Democratic Party. Man, let's roll the tape.
Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Usted estaría dispuesto
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant. Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But
real quick, everybody needs this gentleman here to argue for him. Like you should be able to purchase him, and he's just like an AI robot, and he could just argue stuff for you to death, man. This gentleman right here, watch and see him break this all the way down about this MS-13 gang member, and the Democrats are dying on this hill. They are just dying on this hill.
Would you answer that question also, please?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
a
Court is
to get him
asking
back?
to.
Is that
What was the ruling
that
in the Supreme Court, Steve?
That's
Was
Stephen
it 9
Miller.
to nothing?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
Stephen Miller, dude. Everybody needs a Stephen Miller. This man can argue you to death with facts on top of facts. So we go ahead and deport this gentleman. The Democrats way back in the day had no problems with people being deported or strengthening up the border. Way back in the day, we already seen all the videos on it. And now they want to go down there and try to force the president's hand, the president of El Salvador's hand, to release his man, to bring him back to America. And this is the hill you guys want to die on. You are losing your base. I have family members. We all were Democrats, all of us. We minorities, man. It was indoctrinated in us. Sorry. I've taken the red pill. I have changed since then. I would like to know a couple of things. American citizens, if you voted on this, would you want a senator to go down to El Salvador to check on MS-13 gang member we deported or try to bring him back? Okay. So you got American citizens. I would like to know American voters. Same question. And then I want to break it all the way down to just Democrats. Democrat voters. Would you want this senator who is a Democrat to go down there and check on this gentleman? And then I want to break it down even further to this senator's constituents. Would your constituents want you to use U.S. taxpayer dollar to go down here and check on a gentleman who was going to be deported anyway? Was supposed to be deported anyway, got deported, now you're so concerned about him. And there's so many citizens in this country that have had devastating things happen to them and their families. There's no well-being checks from you. There's no outrage, outcry from you. This right here is strictly political. This is headlines. You want to grab headlines, and you're looking for a win for the Democrats, not a win for the American citizens.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it. They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way. That's Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous. Not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart.
You heard it, man. The El Salvador, the president of El Salvador is mocking y'all, mocking the media. Look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and sneak a terrorist back into the United States. This man is cleaning up his country and his streets. President Donald John Trump is cleaning up his streets and his country. You guys got a little motion on this and you went ahead with this. This senator probably don't even want to do it. But anyway, he's going down to El Salvador to go ahead and do a well-being check. The president of El Salvador has just told you, man, basically this is a joke. We're not deporting anybody back to the United States. The man's a citizen of El Salvador. And then what? We as citizens got paid for this trip? Got paid for you to probably wine and dine your little mistress down there. That's probably why you want to go to El Salvador. You probably got your little side piece. Got you a little side piece. This is ridiculous, man. Let's get to the next clip, man. This is crazy. This is just crazy. This is y'all senator, man. This who y'all voted for.
Happening today, a Democrat senator is traveling down to El Salvador to try to get a deported, suspected migrant gang member back to the United States.
It's really incredible.
This is a good idea.
This comes as other Democrats push for a welfare check at the mega prison where the worst of the worst are being held.
Maybe he's just getting his aura ready. Make a check on him.
Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with more. So, Griff, suddenly this is an issue the Democrats are embracing.
Well, they're rallying around it. Good morning, Steve, Ainsley, Brian, and Lawrence. And look, this may be a first we're going to witness today. A sitting U.S. senator traveling to a foreign country to advocate for an illegal alien deemed affiliated with MS-13 deported to his home country. But that's exactly what Maryland's Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen says he's doing today. Watch.
Chris Van Hollen.
I don't even know if we announced this, but I am planning tomorrow to go to El Salvador to work to bring him home. The Trump administration themselves admitted in federal court that he was wrongfully abducted from the United States.
Let me interject. So the Democratic Party is getting behind this, right? Because this is sticking to the wall. Okay, we can get some traction. We threw a bunch of bullshit at the wall, and this one is sticking. So they're going down to El Salvador, right? And go ahead and check on this gentleman. The president of El Salvador has already basically said, this is a joke. This is funny. President Trump is just laughing at you guys like, okay, you got the people in his cabinet that's explaining to you, hey, we're well within our rights as a country to do this. He's well within his rights as a president of the United States to do this, right? Okay, so my thing is this. Okay, so at when President Trump addressed Congress, man, he gave the speech to Congress. There was a gentleman who was a prisoner, and he was released. President Trump got him out, man. The man was there. It was a great moment. He was there with his mom. The mom pleaded with President Trump. Previous to that, President Trump held to his word, got this man, who was an American citizen, from being a prisoner, and brought him back to the United States. Okay? None of you guys stood for it. You didn't stand for it. You didn't clap for it. Democrats, what are y'all doing? You can't clap for an American citizen that was a hostage that was brought back here, and now you want to go after an MS-13 gang member who was already basically had the paperwork in to be deported anyway. So this dude knew at any time he was going to get deported. Y'all ain't gonna win no more elections. I'm telling you right now.
Democrat rallying around Garcia, a federal judge ordering the Trump administration to facilitate his return. As many as a dozen House Democrats want to follow. Axios obtaining a letter from these representatives, Robert Garcia and Max Frost, requesting a CODEL be authorized to travel on the taxpayer dime. In the letter they write, a congressional delegation would allow committee members to conduct a welfare check on Mr. Abrego Garcia, as well as others held at CCOT. Now this, as Senator Van Hollen pays little notice to another one of his constituents, Rachel Morin, the Maryland mother of 5, murdered by an illegal alien, Victor Martinez Hernandez, found guilty this week of first-degree premeditated murder and first-degree rape. There was no press conference with Van Hollen standing in solidarity with the grieving Morin family. His office simply putting out a statement saying the verdict brought a, quote, measure of justice. And there may be even more
y'all just trash.
Senators heading to El Salvador. Politico reporting this morning, guys, that Senator Cory Booker may be looking at making that trip as well. Guys?
And a couple of members of Congress are asking James Comer to authorize a CODEL so they can go down as well, both Democrats. But also there was some action yesterday, Griff, at the federal court level, and that is the judge who essentially said, okay, the federal government's got to facilitate bringing him back. Supreme Court said, you got to facilitate coming back. And now they put the administration on notice. You got 2 weeks to tell me exactly how hard you've tried to bring the guy back.
Well, that's right, Steve. And Judge Paula Zinnes, the federal judge in this case, says that the Supreme Court backed her up in that facilitation. The administration, fighting over the word facilitating return, does not demand actual return. She's actually given the Trump administration basically until tomorrow to explain why he hasn't been brought back with this tougher deadline. But I think what's going to be interesting as this all plays out is the parallel political track, because it'll be interesting to see what Tom Homan has to say to you guys, because Chris Van Hollen keeps using the word abducted, illegally, that Abrego Garcia was illegally abducted. And there's nothing in the language or in the case that dates back to 2019 that he was abducted. He was brought in and deemed for removal, just not specifically to El Salvador.
Look, man, there should be situations like this. You should have a vote, man. Your constituents should vote on this. Do we want our senator that represents us, to who we voted into public office to have public service, do we want him doing some bullshit like this, man? The people don't want this, man. Y'all losing y'all base. This is some trash, man. Y'all just trash.
But the bottom line is,
what do you do?
Rachel Morin was a part of his district.
Yep. From Maryland.
And I've spent the entire morning trying to find his public comments. I can only find the statement from yesterday when the person was convicted of murdering her. He didn't say anything. There were no protests. This is the type of stuff that really ticks off the American people. When our citizens die, when they're brutally raped, there's no outrage from the media or Democrats. But suddenly, this guy, by the way, the only thing, Ainsley, that's in dispute now is where he was deported.
Right.
So that's the only thing.
That's it.
Caroline Levitt, we have so much to say on this. I want to play this soundbite, and then I want to play Rachel Morin's mom's soundbite, and then I want to get into the meat of this. Here's Caroline Levitt at the White House.
Caroline Levitt.
It's mind-boggling, the priorities of the modern-day Democrat Party. I think it's atrocious that you have Democrats in Congress on Capitol Hill who swear an oath to protect their constituents and to serve them in Washington, D.C., spending more time defending illegal immigrant gang members than their own constituents and law-abiding American citizens like Rachel Morin.
I'm very angry. I'm actually outraged, but I'm too sad at the moment to show anger at the same time. There was no action on the Democratic Party in any way, from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mayorkas, anyone here in Maryland, none of the senators did anything to help search for the murderer of my daughter.
See?
So this is what's so upsetting. You have this senator of Maryland, Senator Chris Van Hollen, who's going down there. He says the courts have ordered the safe return of my constituent. He's talking about this MS-13. 2 courts said he's an MS-13. ICE has confirmed he was an MS-13, which means he's a terrorist in our country. Yes. So he gets kicked out of our country, and now that's the constituent he cares about. Is he even a constituent? A constituent is a voting member of a community. Can he vote in Maryland? Not for a federal election, right? So
This is just all for headlines, ladies and gentlemen, man. They are trying to drum up whatever motion they can get, man. They don't care. You got these people, man, just throwing out just lies, and they're doing all these things. They can't even celebrate any of the wins. That's how you know they're not pro-American. Americans are celebrating wins on both sides, man. We're celebrating the wins. We don't care. Democrats are celebrating the wins. They can't even celebrate the wins, and they want to try to convince you that you're not happy with what President Trump is doing. And every single Democrat that I personally know, family and friends that are like family, all applaud President Trump and are very happy with the work that he's doing, man, because all they care about is country, what's best for our country. These people chasing headlines, man.
Patty Moran says, I live in this district. He never came to visit me.
Or my family.
I live in the same district. He could have come over to my house and said, hey, and I didn't hear from Democrats. She said, I didn't hear from Joe Biden, Kamala, Mayorkas, or her senator. She did hear from the governor, Wes Moore, but she said he didn't do anything about anything after that.
J.D. Vance.
Well, the reason she didn't hear from any Democrats is it's a losing proposition for them.
So is what they're doing to go down to the prisons.
It's true.
Listen, when somebody... It's two different. It's the same topic, but it's two different stories. You know, the migrant kills the woman in Maryland. That's one story, but this one is so much better because the way the Democrats are spinning it is this: it was a El Salvadoran who was in the country legally and was,
which is not true.
No, he was.
No, he was not. He had a final deportation order. The only thing that's in dispute is where he was sent.
I can actually give you the background. So he comes over at 16 by his parents, I guess so-called. He'd qualify as a dreamer, whatever that means. At 19, he gets picked up, or 20 years old, he gets picked up in front of a Home Depot. And the Prince County cops pick him up, and they go, this guy's here illegally. He's a suspected gang member. We're turning him over to ICE. He ends up in front of a court, and the judge, Elizabeth Kessler, says, you're a verified MS-13 ICE member. You're avoided hearing, and there's going to be evidence, so it's going to be coming up in 8 months. So on December 29th, he appealed because he was supposed to be deported. And he says, they said, again, you're a member of MS-13. He said, okay, before you kick me out of the country, I'd like to apply for asylum. And they go, okay, you can apply for asylum. I don't know where you're going to stand on. He goes, but by the way, if you do kick me out, it looks like you're going to kick me out. If you do kick me out, I'm going to say, whatever you do, don't kick me out to El Salvador. He said, okay. So they go, he is on a removal order. Living from that time to 2025. He's living here, knowing that he could be removed at any moment. Now, people say, okay, he could have been kicked out to any country. Why'd you put him in El Salvador? So Stephen Miller says yesterday, he goes, a couple of things. The reason why you don't go to El Salvador is MS-13. That's right. MS-13 has been eliminated as a threat because the El Salvador president arrested all of them, neck tattoos and all. So you could say, on one count, he's been eliminated as a threat. On the other count is MS-13, thanks to this president, is a terrorist, is a terrorist group. So we're kicking you out for being a member of a terrorist group. So this senator and the Codell want to go down and visit the MS-13 member living on a removal order in Maryland. He's not an American. He may be a dad, but it has nothing to do with his legal status. And MS-13 is one of the most brutal gangs you will ever
look at the photos.
Absolutely ridiculous. So the Democrats are trying to lie and say, hey, this man was abducted. He wasn't. This man has a removal order. So he could have been removed at any time. So the question is, well, we don't want him in El Salvador. The man is a citizen of El Salvador. The ridiculousness just keeps piling up. Democrats, you're losing your base. I'm letting y'all know, man. You heard it here. You're losing your base. I'm talking to your base. I was your base. Y'all lost me. Y'all had been lost me. I'm just letting you know you're losing your base because of ridiculous stuff like this. People see exactly what you guys are doing. You guys are just full of just ridiculousness, man. All kind of stuff you have no comments for. You got an American company that's getting firebombed and people are being threatened for owning Teslas. None of you guys have comments. The minute that one of you guys, senators or whatever, something happens at his crib, next thing you know, oh man, the violence has to stop. The violence has to stop. Everybody sees what you're doing. You're throwing all this stuff at the wall. Everyone's pulling out these old school videos where you guys are talking about illegal immigrants being here and how you're going to deport them. Everybody knows about Barack Obama's deporter in chief. Now all of a sudden you guys got a problem with people being deported, man. Kids were separated from families before. Now y'all worried about this man who was an MS-13 gang member, was already ready to be deported up out of this country, man. The guy is a criminal. He's in this country illegally, and this is the hill you all want to die on. Y'all is just some liars, and you're losing your base. Y'all losing your base, man. Democrats may never win another election.